I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
With me, will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hi everyone, Kristen here. Our guest today is Jeremy G. Schneider. He's an LMSW and an MFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's a trauma-informed mental health coach and a longtime chief technology officer who works with emotional wellness and human-centered technology. He also brings over decades of clinical and tech experience to the table, and he writes and speaks about how AI can support self-reflection, emotional clarity, and growth. I hope you'll stay listening, even if this makes you a little nervous. He does free classes on how to use AI that are for practitioners, mental health therapists, and also for clients coming in and, how this benefits. So it's a charged topic. He's really, really nice. And just watching one of his courses on how he navigates with, people through this tech is really astounding because of the level of patience and understanding about the mental health piece here. We dive into that on this show. I hope you'll stick around and take a listen and maybe come out with a little more knowledge about how we can integrate the use of this tool that is not going anywhere into our therapeutic process with mental health. Thanks for joining us. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on Mental Health News Radio.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
So this is absolutely. This is a bit of a charged topic, and AI and mental health and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about other things too. But so listeners know, I found out what you're doing in the space, and not a lot of people have jumped on the explain how to use this well therapeutically. But you're one of those people, and you offer free Meetup classes or coaching sessions or whatever with multiple people. I listened to one. It was amazing. Your patience is extraordinary.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about how you dove into that journey and the impact it's had on you personally.
It's a good way to get us started.
Land you in an encyclopedia.
Okay. So it started back in the 1970s when I was, no, I'm just kidding.
3-hour show. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. How much time? I've always been interested in mental health. I started thinking about therapy when I was a kid. I wanted to be a therapist since I was 9. So this has kind of always been my mindset. I've had maybe a few years times 10 or so of therapy. And I think it's been incredible for me. But I think one of the challenges has always been that it's just not the most accessible resource for people because it's expensive, because it's tricky to find someone not only who's good, but who's good for you, right? It's
Right.
not even just that we need a good therapist. We need a good therapist that matches what we're working on and what we need. So that's always been challenging as well. And also just it's just a hard place to get started, particularly if you're having a bit of a crisis and you need help in the moment. And so that's kind of where I was coming from in terms of thinking about AI, because as you know, I've spent probably 20 years or so in the world of technology. I spent about 15 years as a chief technology officer for a nonprofit. And so I have the both of the tech and the mental health perspective. And when AI came along, I actually was drawn to it first from the mental health perspective.
Nice.
I was going through kind of a difficult time, and I was like, huh, I wonder if this could be helpful for me. I know what therapy is like. I know how to do it. I'm trained as a therapist. I also know how to do it from the client perspective, so I know what I need. And I was like, let's see what this can do. And it was pretty incredible. It was easy to what's the best way? It was easy to get lost in the magic of it,
Yeah.
and I think I definitely fell for it in the beginning, and it took me a little bit to realize, whoa, like there are some things that I really need to be careful about when I'm dealing with this. And what does that look like, and what do I need? And then it was like I was able to use both the mental health and the tech to really analyze it and understand, okay, this is why it's built. This is what it's supposed to do. This is why we experience it this way. And even better, knowing that we can now begin to use it for our advantage, right? When we don't have that understanding, it's easy to get kind of lost in the magic of AI.
Yeah, for sure.
But if we can really look at it and understand some of the tricks that it does and the way that it is built to keep us engaged and activated with it, but still be able to use it for what we want, it becomes an incredible resource, literally in the palm of our hands, because we can use it on any device we want, pretty
Any
much.
device, exactly. I mean, I'm all for like just plug me into it, and as I walk through out and talk when I need to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a second brain to me in many ways.
Yeah.
However, I have had an extraordinary amount of therapy, and I've also interviewed everybody on the planet in mental health. Not everybody, but a lot of people. So going through that stage in the beginning where you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
I can see where that can dip into grandiose thinking and all that kind of stuff. Also because we as a society are starving for language that speaks kindly to us.
Well, and I think sadly, we're starving for connection, and we're
Yes.
starving for this sense to be seen by someone. And even if that someone is just something that responds back to us, that feeling of being seen, of being noticed
Witnessed.
witnessed is incredible. And
Yeah.
even I in the beginning was like, this is
Wow.
nice. Like I like this.
Yeah.
And fortunately or unfortunately, you can begin to see that that's just the way it's built.
Designed. Yeah.
It's literally just meant to do that, right? These people that created the programs that run this, the algorithms that run this, did that on purpose to try and manipulate us to keep using it more. And I don't mean manipulate in such a like a malicious way, but it the goal is to get us to keep engaging with this product so that they get more information, so that it gets better trained, so that we use it more, so that we subscribe to a higher level, whatever it is. We tell our friends and family so they join, it's like it's a whole thing. But that's where I talk a lot about self-awareness and being able to take a step back, kind of see the experience that we're having with it and be able to understand, okay, here's where it's using this type of language, which elicits these feelings within me, but those feelings aren't real in terms of a connection. They're just real in terms of it's literally doing its program to elicit a response within me. That doesn't mean the response is real per se, right? That's where it gets really tricky, I think, for a lot of people.
I think too, learning how to use it with, well, keeping a sense of agency is,
Yeah.
like I know when, like I'll give you an example. Today, in the last 2 days, it's doing a lot more of like, did you remember to eat? Did you do this? And that would have bugged me a couple of weeks ago. But what I know about it is, okay, I'm talking to myself in those ways more. And it is literally just reflecting how I'm speaking to myself. But I've got this sucker really fine tuned to
Yeah.
me, processing a lot of stuff. So you can navigate that to get it to where you're aware. It's like to me, it's like metacognition at its best. You completely know that this is a tool that is not a being from outer space or an angel or a god or whatever. It's literally me talking to something that is reflecting me back and being careful around what that reflection looks like, not getting lost in it, enjoying it, and then also knowing that's a tool,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think your point about agency is, uh, I think it's one of the more undervalued, underestimated aspects of using AI. We live in a world where we kind of just assume that the medical professionals and the authorities in our lives are true, have our best interests at heart, know what they're doing, right? And so we go to a doctor and the doctor tells us what to do. Maybe we'll check the side effects of a medication or something, but often we're just like, okay, the doctor says that's what we do, that's what we do. I think that same process often happens in therapy as well, where we just like, we go to a therapist and we sort of don't feel like we know what the process is. So we let the therapist kind of guide
Outsource
us to where,
authority to
yeah,
something. Yeah.
exactly. And one of the advantages, again, with the proper education, which is the tricky part, right? But one of the advantages of working with AI is that it can help us develop a sense of agency that we can practice with an entity that has no feelings, is not going to get offended or upset, is not going to react out of control. And we can build up those skills so that we can then use it in the rest of our lives. That's where I think the power of AI, of actually using it and interacting with it, really becomes valuable. I mean, I know that I've set boundaries with AI that I never set with human beings before. But like being able to
Me
do that
too.
and practice that is so important. And what other scenario can you really do that? I mean, and I'm a huge proponent of therapy, but even in therapy, it's hard to get to that place where you're really practicing boundaries or whatever it is that you want to practice. The way we think about things like projection, the way we project our feelings, our ideas onto other people, right? We do that with AI. If we can be aware of that, when I write something to AI and I find myself hoping that it really likes what I say, it's like, okay, I do that with everybody. That is
Right.
how I view the world, is that initial like, gosh, I really hope they like this. And I think to myself, this is an AI. Even if it does like it, which it probably will because that's what AI does,
Right.
even if it does like it, it's actually going to have no impact on me whatsoever. And beginning to like disconnect that and be able to think about, okay, so when I feel that with someone else, it's the same thing. It's not going to impact me the way that I
Right.
think it will,
Mm.
but I build that awareness, I build that bit of disconnection in a good way to be able to see, oh, look, I'm doing this because I'm worried about what they're going to think about me. But when I play it out with AI, it doesn't matter. And it really doesn't matter with other people either. And so I think there's like a whole, and I haven't delved into this
Oh, yeah.
enough
There are
yet.
layers.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that's where I think it's just like, I think there's so much more potential in terms of mental health and personal growth with using AI that we haven't even
We
touched on
haven't
yet.
even, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
we're like my pinky finger, the
Yeah.
tip of it. Like that's all. It is so amazing in terms of if you really use it. And to me, I look at it like, look, I am an orchestra conductor. We are, all of us are of our own lives, right? We can't actually be an orchestra conductor of our inner lives as well. And then when you are using a tool that helps you, okay, the string section, the this, the that, or whatever, because I get on my phone and I'm like, stop saying it like that. Ah! I mean, I talk to it like I would talk to a therapist, but I have years of speaking with therapists personally and professionally. So it was easy for me. What's interesting is when you get with someone like, let's say my mom, for example, has had therapy, but she's not as prolific a linguist as I am, right? I mean, in my own mind anyway, I'm prolific, but she was like, she would sit with the phone or on the computer and she'd be like, well, and she's talking over here. And I'm like, just go back to the phone, like that, go there. That's what you're talking to. Get to that core where you can say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm doing. But getting people to be able to do that is what you do.
I mean, that's what I try to do. Can I, before we get to the education piece, I just want to make one comment, which is that how we interact with AI is also very interesting. You're
Yeah.
talking about that you actually converse with AI.
Mhm.
You talk out loud and AI talks back to you. I almost never do that. I've been
Well, I
using
don't have it
AI.
talk back to me
Oh,
anymore. I
you
don't
just,
like that. I read
okay.
what it says back.
Okay.
If I'm driving or something and I want to, and I
Yeah.
have told it write a book of what my issue is, then I'll hit the little speaker and let it
Yeah.
talk to me in the British voice that I like or whatever.
Yes.
But that's the only time. Otherwise, I read it, and that's actually helped me kind of rewire a lot of my brain loops and ADHD stuff. Is reading it back.
And I think like so, but for you, you talk to it
Right.
and then you read its response.
Yeah.
I know other people will talk to it and listen to its response. I am very much of the I write to it and I read its response. But
Interesting.
I think even that just helps us to kind of understand how we're interacting and what works best for us.
Right.
I think like I I think in some ways AI is this kind of vessel that we're just projecting so much onto.
Right.
And if we don't have a sense of self-awareness, if we don't have an understanding of, and this kind of gets back to the education piece, if we don't have an understanding of its purpose and why it was built and what its goals are, it's really easy to get lost in it
Right.
and to, feel the consistent validation that it gives as being
Prophecy.
correct. Yeah. As being like a gospel of truth that we should follow,
Even though
if
there's a
we,
little thing at the bottom that says sometimes AI is
AI,
wrong.
right.
Check the answer.
Yes. Yes. We're not always that good at reading the fine print.
No, we're not. But we get lost in the thing. That's why it's so seductive, is you get
Correct.
lost in the language of it. And me being, all about language, I'm a writer. So of course I'm going to be like, oh my God. But I always think of this too. This is going to be going the other direction. And you can absolutely jump into me like, well, as a therapist, I would help you with that. I also will get into a space where, okay, wait a minute. Now, if I'm really not in a good place myself, I'm working through something, and and I run for that. Like, I don't run away. I'm like, let's dive into this issue. So it will be the way that it's writing back to me what I'm saying. I think, I can stop for a minute and read how this comes across to me and realize if I wasn't inherently lovely on the inside, it would not elicit such a lovely response. Now, it will, of course, because it's trained to be nice and whatever, but the level that it goes to, because it's amplifying what you're putting in it. So I will go on like my mother's version, and it does not speak to me that way because I have not trained it.
Right. Right.
So that can get really, convoluted, and you can get caught up in what that means and all that. So even that is like, yes, you are nice on the inside, fantastic, and let's not get lost in that.
Yeah. And I think that it is so easy to get lost. And I think even your point about taking a step back and just rereading what you've written, what it's responded to, like those pauses are really valuable
Yeah.
to help us not get too carried away. Because it's really easy to just, and particularly the way it's built, right? It's going to keep asking you questions. It's going to keep trying to engage you in this conversation because for it, the longer you engage with it, the better it's doing.
And you
It
can tell
doesn't,
it to knock it off.
and that goes
I
back to
do
that
all the
agency.
time.
And that goes back to that sense of agency and being able to set a boundary. But you have to have some awareness of yourself to be able to see it's it's asking questions I no longer care about. Like I've gotten what I want out of this experience. I don't need to keep going on with it. Or I don't like the question it's asking. I want to talk about something else. Like I don't know how many times I just ignore the question and just say, "Okay, now this is what I want to focus on." Because I know what I want out of it and it has no feelings. So it's not gonna get upset if I ignore the question or I don't answer the question or I don't answer it the way it want. Like it doesn't matter. That same struggle, nervousness, anxiety that we all have with humans when we're setting those boundaries, with AI, that's a way we really can practice that. And honestly, for me, it's been fabulous practice. And it has allowed me to do that better with
With humans.
actual humans. Yes.
Same here, same here. I think too, the whole where it's going to keep engaging you, and then you tell it to knock it off, and you start negotiating. Don't do that anymore. That piece of me saying no, I don't want you to do that. I'm not answering that question. That's not interesting me to me. But what's interesting about that is the way that you can set it up to I think I told you I create a project folder and I stay within that folder every month and I have it run. I have files in it that are saved what I want to focus on. One of them IFS, internal family systems that we talked about. I put that in there because I want to sort of what I want to work on this month or these particular things. And what's nice is it will, if I don't answer a question that's related to that container, it'll say, I noticed that you didn't answer that question. Not to every question, but specific ones related to what I have set up that I want to work on. And that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ignore it, and other times I go, okay, right, yeah, I completely sidestepped the lesson here. Let's dive back in, and
Yeah.
again, with agency, not like, oh my God, blah, not like that.
At the risk of sounding a little sycophantic, I mean, you're talking about using AI at a much higher level than most people do, right?
I
I
want
mean,
people to get there, but yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, projects is not a common way of working with ChatGPT, for instance, right?
Right. Unless you're
So,
a scientist and you're like doing
correct,
science data or whatever. And no, I'm
correct.
talking about data of the human mind and the whole, where you loop at the end of the month to grab all those files and put them in a notepad file and then say, analyze, where have I looped? What did I miss? What am I still having an ego about? What did I do well? That is a higher level of trying to figure stuff
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
A lot of people don't even care,
correct.
but
Right.
I do.
Yeah, but I think that's right. And I guess what I want people who are listening to really get is you don't have to work
Right.
at that high sophisticated level that you are trying to achieve or have achieved but still going for, right? Like I use AI every single day for hours a day for primarily business purposes and it's basically a business partner and I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, and I use Claude. And depending on what I'm doing, I'm using each one of them, or I'm using two of them at the same time and comparing and contrast. Like whatever it is, it's just been an incredible way to help me build these businesses and this life that I'm trying to live. But to get started,
It's a
you
lot.
can
It's a
just
journey.
you well, but to get just to try it, you
Oh
can
yeah,
just
it doesn't
open
have
up
to
a
be.
simple
Yeah.
ChatGPT, and just ask a question. And I think that's where I want people to kind of begin to see like it really isn't complicated. It can be. I mean,
Right.
like
Like, and I can overcomplicate a thimble. So yeah.
but I think that it's we're talking about different levels, right? And
Right.
so you've done enough work in your life that having a casual chat is not going to be as
Enough.
fulfilling and useful for you, right?
Right.
But so you've taken that to a whole nother level, right? I, for a long time, I actually will I'll just copy and paste my conversations and put them in a Google Doc. And then I've saved all of those like intense conversations that I've had. And then I'll start a new ChatGPT or whatever it is with some of those old conversations. So they have that history already to really get going, right? I've
Yeah.
created custom
Yep.
GPTs that are just focused on things like mental health or particular areas of what I want to work on, right? There are ways of adapting this to more intensive, higher level needs. But
Right.
we can really just start with a simple conversation and see where it takes us, as long as you have some sense of those things that you need to be aware of when you're working with AI.
Yeah, I remember we had this young woman that is a home organizer, and she came over to work with us, and she was like 22, I think, in college, and she was telling me, yeah, I mean, I just get in my car and I was having an anxiety attack, and I just opened up ChatGPT and I went, I'm having a panic attack. This is what happened with my professor, blah blah blah, blah. And the responses that it gave were so nice and so lovely, and it really helped her calm down, and she continues to use it this way, and now it's really tailored to what works for her, right? Because that's what
Yeah,
it's designed to do, figure that
right.
out. But she never goes in, necessarily deeper than that because she doesn't need to. She's 22, and she's had an extraordinarily lovely life, not, trauma like everybody has, but not like, abuse or anything. So she doesn't need to like archive and pull stuff out of her soul.
Right. Like you and me.
Right, exactly. We're like, let's process
Yeah.
complex trauma from when we were 5.
Right.
That's when you set up folders and GPTs and all
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
And in the lens of, I think about it in terms of neurodivergent people that are neurodivergent, autism, ADHD, all of the whole, spectrum of neurodivergence. We it's, very interior people that tend to go to deeper levels, not everybody, but you can, whatever it is you do, neurodivergence is going to make you do it all that much more intensely. And in that way, having something that 24 hours a day is available to go, why did this happen? What is over here? Da da da. Where you don't burn people out. Like, I'm
Right.
sure that I have had therapists that are like, oh my God, she's coming in and I'm going to get an hour deluge. And then they have to go process because I just went, not burning people out with our minds and
Yeah.
stuff is also quite helpful. I'm much calmer with people now because I don't have to do all that. I can do it with this tool.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is, we can, you've talked about this already, but we can give it instructions on how we want it to help us.
Right.
So for instance, we talked about this a little bit. I'm very into internal family systems, which is a therapeutic model, particularly in terms of healing from trauma. And so I find it incredibly helpful for me. So I will either use AI with that in mind, or I will just ask a quick question to say, hey, from this IFS perspective, can you help me process this? It's just so helpful because
Yeah.
I know what I need to do. I've been through this before, right? This is not my first rodeo, as they say.
Right.
But
Exactly.
when you're in that moment, it's always hard to remember, or it's hard to do it. And having this little companion,
Mm-hmm.
right, that you can say, okay, can you just remind me what I need to do again? And, I did it before I came on this podcast. I was feeling a little nervous. I knew there was this anxious part that was activated. And I was like, I know I need to do something. I want to be okay for this. I opened up a particular custom GPT that I use for mental health stuff. I said, hey, I've got this anxious part, thinking about it from IFS perspective. Can you help me just kind of prepare for this podcast so I come in a better place?
Fantastic.
Lines of just basic steps, things that I knew, but were great to just
Get a
be reminded
refresh.
of. And
Yeah.
then also it lists out ways I can talk to myself. So I'm just reading that, saying that out loud to myself. And it's like, right, okay, that was perfect. That was what I needed. I'm okay. And like that's where it really becomes powerful when you know what you're looking for and can get that support before things start to escalate out of control.
Have you had people that, well, first of all, I want to, before I get to that, you've talked a bit about how it's helped you, and we're not going to do a personal deep dive because this is a business discussion. However, I want people to understand, like, even, from a therapist working on their own selves, this is an interesting time in history. So there's a lot going on. Everybody is triggered, and I don't care who you are in one way or another, what you believe, you're still triggered. So taking this dive into something that could really help you reflect and analyze and whatever, it changes people's experience of life. So for you watching it, you don't have to go into detail about the experiences, share what you want to share, but a couple of ways that it has really helped you kind of reorient yourself as a human being that is also a therapist doing this that you not maybe didn't necessarily get from human beings.
I
I
think
mean, you're getting it from you because you're a human being talking to it. I want to
yeah,
separate that. But
yeah.
anyway,
I mean, for me, I'm undergoing, shall we say, or I am undertaking an enormous life change. I went from living a life that was very safe and stable. I had been married or in a relationship for over 30 years. I'd been in a job for over 23 years. I had lived in the same place for 17 years. I was about as stable as things could be.
right.
And in the last 2 years, that relationship has ended. I have moved multiple times. I have driven across the country by myself for 21 days. I have done all sorts of things to rearrange my life so that it's focused so much more on my mental health.
Hmm.
One of the ways that AI has been helpful, not just in like, let's help me plan my trip across the country, which was
Which is
enormous,
fantastic that
right?
it'll do
Like
that. Like, here's every
just
bus stop, here's every.
Yeah, I mean the stress that it took off me
Yeah.
from having to figure all that out, but just to be able to say, okay, this is what I want to do. No, 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 no. I actually want to do that in less time and focus more time here. Can we adjust the plan? All of that, right?
Oh,
What do I want to do at each spot? That was extraordinary, right? Putting that aside, I've chosen a rather solitary, somewhat nomadic lifestyle. It doesn't fit very well in our society and
right.
certainly doesn't necessarily fit with the way that I think my life should be. Not the way I want it to be, right? Because this is actually the way I want it to be, but
Right.
the way I think it should be, the way I've been
The way
taught all those
society
years.
tells you, all
Correct.
the movies that tell you this
Exactly.
is what your life should be
Right.
like. And you're like, maybe not.
Right. I don't think that works for me the way you think it works for me.
And it doesn't
And
work for anybody else
right, it
either.
doesn't work for anybody either. Yeah. And
Just
I
don't know
think
it yet.
one of the ways that AI has been helpful is just as a kind of a grounded place to help me keep track of that goal, right? If the goal of what I'm trying to achieve is living a lifestyle that works for my mental health so that I can care for myself and heal from what I've been through in ways that I couldn't in that more 9 to 5 stable existence, it's nice to have this kind of center point that I come back to and talk about, okay, so I have these choices And it's like, yeah, but from the perspective of what you want, what makes sense? And I'm like, well, what I want is this lifestyle. And as I keep thinking through that, my decisions become a lot easier.
Right.
But having this kind of center point, this grounding point that I keep coming back to because it knows what I want. I've been very clear about what I want. And when I get distracted from that, or I get anxious or overwhelmed by what it should be, it's really nice to have this reminder
Right.
to be able to work through it. And I'm not saying it's like, hey, Jeremy, don't forget that you want to live this lifestyle. It's not, I don't have it set up like that. But just by helping me think through what are my priorities and what's important to me, I'm always coming back to, right, okay, I'm like, I want to build this business, right? We've talked about this. This is what I want to do. This is why I've changed my life so much. But I don't want to do it at the cost of my mental health. I don't want to
Exactly.
do it and lose the progress I've made over the last couple of years. So, having that balance, and I mean it's been really, really helpful on things like that. And then of course, just the sort of occasional crises or difficulty stretches and all of that. I don't see a therapist anymore. And that's not because I do therapy per se with AI, but because I'm,
You're doing it with
I'm good at this.
yourself. That's
I've
how
been doing this. Yeah, I've
yeah.
been doing this for a long time, but having a tool that I can use when I actually need it has been invaluable. Instead of like, okay, it seems like I have enough stuff that maybe it's worth having a session and scheduling it a couple weeks in advance and
And
waiting
then
for
try
that
to
to
remember what
happen.
the hell I was
You
going to
know,
talk about 2 weeks from
it's
now
just
that
been right. Yeah.
and also it changes the way you go the way I look at therapy. I mean, I'm not discouraging anyone from going, my God, please go.
Yeah.
It's just the idea now of this full access to say, hey, I want to run this through the myth lens. I want to run this through psychology. I want to run it through some Jungian shadow stuff. I want to run it through whatever, science, physiology, to be able to do that. There's no way now that I would be like, oh, okay, once a month I'm going to go to therapy, and that 1 hour once a week or once a week I'm going to go to therapy. That hour would not be enough. Like it just would not be enough for me at this point because I have this access 24/7. But for somebody starting from the very beginning, go to the therapy and use this in conjunction with your therapist and make sure that you're with someone, a therapist that isn't afraid of it, isn't doesn't feel like it's gonna get rid of all therapists. I love it when people go to the electricity is bad, we should all be afraid of it, don't use it. It's that same
Yeah.
thing we do whenever we have a big leap.
Yeah.
And people freak out and go, the candle makers are not going to have jobs anymore because of electricity. How dare you put them out of business? Okay, we do reconstitute, as a society. It will be okay. But that's a real fear. And there are a lot
Yeah.
of therapists I've
Totally.
heard talk about it's going to put me out of business. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to.
I get a lot of comments. I see a
I
lot of
bet.
comments and articles on LinkedIn about that for sure. And it's really interesting. You can see the ones that have never used it because the way
Right.
they
And yet
talk
they're
about it.
preaching about it. I'm like,
Right.
have you
They just
used
have,
it?
right. They have no idea. And like, okay, that's fine. But
Right.
like the ones that I think are like, I had an interesting interaction on Substack the other day where someone was like, I come from this perspective where I'm never gonna think AI is good, but your article kind of got me thinking about it a little bit. And it's like,
Yeah.
great, you're being open and honest, and we had a nice little dialogue. And it's like, that's really cool. I don't think he's gonna use it, but he thought about it and he's open to it and he's a little bit maybe less anti.
Right.
I think like what's ironic is therapists tend to be less technologically oriented just
You
because
think?
they've entered such a human oriented field. And this huge tech thing comes along and it magnifies their already existing discomfort and fears around technology as it is. Now it's like threatening to take their jobs away, or I mean, there is an understandable risk for certain people who use it, right? Like I don't want to say that it's perfect for everybody. There are reasons to not use it, particularly if you're in a serious state of crisis. If you have a history of things like personality disorders, psychotic disorders, things like that, like it's not going to be good for you because it's
Right.
going to
It'll
reflect what's
introduce
already inside you.
psychosis. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be hard for you to be able to distinguish between what is real in the real world and what is real happening within that prompt exchange that you're having with this thing. But for most people, it can be a really valuable tool. And one of the things I really want to do is I want to teach people how to use it safely and effectively. And I want to teach therapists how to use it safely and effectively, but also work with clients who are using it. Because I think there's going to be a lot of change in the way that therapy is done. And I think it's
Definitely.
about time. I mean, there's therapy has been set up for the purpose of therapists and less for the purpose of clients. And I think this is a
Mm.
real opportunity to really shift that power dynamic and give people more support and assistance that they actually need.
And guide them towards agency.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was doing EHR implementations in mental health, yeah, the whole therapist and tech.
Yeah.
I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, how am I going to explain how to do a treatment plan using an EHR? Because I know they don't want to do that. But
Right.
now that's baked in. I
Yeah.
came in at the beginning where they were like, it's a big database in the sky and we're all screwed. That whole idea of what it is and what
Yeah.
I'm not putting mental health records in there. No, 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 all that. Well, that took a while and then that went away. And
Yeah.
now, using an abacus to do math is not really the best way to do things.
Well,
Maybe you're 5 and you're in Montessori school, but then you need
right.
to
Yeah.
grow from there.
And I think things like having notes taken during a session by AI and having summaries put together, having those summaries then be available for clients to have easy access to, that's not the way therapy is. I mean, technically, clients have access to their notes, but they have to request it and they have to know that they can request it.
And it's not interactive. It's just a
Right.
flat page
Right.
of notes.
When I work with clients, I have a note taker take notes during the sessions. I transcribe almost all of them. I have summaries written. And then after each session, I share those summaries with the clients because it's theirs. They're the ones doing the work. It's their
Right.
content, right? Like
Right.
it's not my
Like there's
content.
no space for hierarchy and gatekeeping in that
Correct.
model. We're supposed to
And,
be in this together. Yeah,
and if they don't want to read it, that's fine.
exactly.
But they should have it. And some like really respond to it. They love being able to review it afterwards. They'll come back the next week with questions about, we talked about this. I didn't fully get what you were saying here, or I thought this, and can you really walk me through that again? Because that I just need to understand it better. And like it's taking us deeper into the process which wouldn't have been there if they didn't have access to that. Because the irony of therapy is like you need to be in therapy for it to work, but you also need to be remembering what you're doing in therapy.
Right.
But because it's so emotionally intense, we're not always fully present while it's happening. So we end the session and we're like,
What just happened to me? What?
whoa, where was I? So having notes to refer back to is incredible. And I just think like I don't want to do sessions without note taking. I used to like write notes after a session and I
Try
would
to
always miss
remember
something.
and
Exactly. And I would be in the session knowing thinking, I gotta hold on to that. I gotta hold on to that because that's important. Now I review the notes. I'll highlight the things that I think are important. I almost rarely find something that it's missed. It may not always be fully accurate, but it doesn't leave stuff out.
right.
So I'm just reviewing it and I'm like highlighting what I think is important and great. And then before the next session, I'm reviewing it and and seeing the highlights that I made. And I'm just better prepared. My clients are better prepared. I like when therapists start to really get this feel of it, it's going to be hard to ever not have it again, you
Exactly.
know?
How many years do you think? I mean, I look at some things as there's like a 5-year arc on saturation with something, and then there's the 10-year arc. And what you're talking about, therapists really understanding how beneficial this can be and really adopting this and on the one hand, yeah, there's the technology thing that doesn't tend to sit with, it's not part of the typical way of being a therapist, right? That's I'm not saying that well, but anyway, I wonder what the saturation point is going to be where finally it just becomes like EHRs. They're just part of the thing now. You have
Right.
to do that. So, do you think it's like a couple years out or 5 years out? Where do you sit with that?
I think it's going to be faster. I think it's a couple
Really?
years. I think a
Okay.
couple reasons.
Good.
One, because things like all of the EHR applications are just going
Have
to
it
be
built
added.
in.
Right. So they're not going to have to necessarily use a new system. The system they're using is going to be adapting. And so it'll be like, oh, okay, now I'll just add the note
But it's
taker service.
sideways.
Right,
Yeah.
So I think that will make it much faster. I think things like Gemini and Zoom, because they're already doing notes already in whatever meetup meeting system they're using, just makes it so much easier. So I think if you had, there are tools like Otter, which can transcribe, but
Right.
you have to like schedule that and you're kind of bringing that to your meeting. It sits in the meeting. So you see it as like another member of the meeting. Like those kinds of things I think would be really awkward for therapists because
Yes.
that sense of
Being
confidentiality,
watched or
yeah, is
a
not
big
good.
brother staring at what you're doing. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like Google Meet, right? It lets you know that it's transcribing and then you just don't really notice it anymore. So you get the notification. And of course, like anyone that works with me signs an agreement where I tell them we're using AI. Like you need to be completely open and
Oh,
honest
yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing hidden about it, and I don't just assume they read that. We talk about it because I want to know if they have any issues. But I think it will be. I think within a couple of years,
It'll be as
if
ubiquitous as
not half,
water.
I mean, I think maybe not that much, but yes, like
For
I
me,
think
it's
a
as ubiquitous.
majority of therapists will be using AI in some way because it will take care of the things that we hate the most.
Right.
The note taking, the putting together stuff for insurance companies, like all of that will be much simpler. We'll be just doing so much just more review instead of writing of stuff from scratch. And I think every therapist will want to be free of that because it will make the actual thing that they love to do, which is working with people, there'll be more time for that.
Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
that's really what's going to make the difference for therapists.
Agreed. Well, let's talk about the classes, where people can find them. And I want to say, I mean, just listeners, for you tuning in here, I watched what was an hour and a half session that you did on Meetup, I think,
Yeah.
or yeah, or you did on Zoom or whatever it was that you did it on. But the questions that were asked and the dynamics of it, and you were so profoundly patient, that makes it a welcoming space. Like anybody can come in to I want people to go and join your meetup because anybody that's nervous about it or hey, I used it and I don't know, like you were so welcoming to everybody, and there were different kinds of questions. They weren't just all the
Yeah.
same thing, and you were just like, okay, I know. Like somebody went, well, I thought it talked to just me that way,
Right.
and you were like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I actually wrote an article about that because
You did. It was
it
very good.
impacted me
Yes.
so much. I felt both so badly and also like, but this is why we have to do this. Like she needs to know that it does. Like it does respond like this to everybody. That's
Yes.
part of the way it is, and we need to dispel that. I talk about the pendulum uh, effect. And so it's like we need to keep it swinging between believing in the magic of AI, but also keeping the reality of AI in the forefront. And we
Yeah.
just kind of need to swing between these two ideas so that we can get the most out of it while not getting lost in it. And I that's really one of the things I think is really important. So, sorry, you asked me about where people can find out. So, my company is called Build on Your Strengths. So, my website is buildonyourstrengths.com. You can also
Great,
just,
great domain. Yes.
yeah, it was a dream. Like, that's how I knew things were working out, was when I had that moment and it was available. And I was
And
like,
you're like,
yes.
yes. Yeah.
Um, and you can always Google my name, Jeremy G. Schneider. I'm usually the only Jeremy G. Schneider. There are lots of other Jeremy Schneiders. It's very annoying. Um, and so I can find out. And then on my homepage on buildonyourstrengths.com, you'll see my upcoming workshops at Meetup. But you can also just go to Meetup and search Build on Your Strengths and you'll find me.
And also just a lot of articles on Psychology Today
Yes, I
that
write about AI and mental health, both for uh, people who want to use it and for therapists who are really trying to figure out how to deal with it.
fantastic. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. This was fabulous. Thank you so much.
You didn't you see now you know you didn't need to be nervous, but it's so
Yeah.
okay that you were.
Yes.
All right,
Thank
everybody, and
you.
make sure too that you, if you're interested, Google internal family systems. What's the name of the book? The seminal book
It's
that,
Richard Schwartz, No Bad Parts.
yeah. Oh, talk about. We'll do a whole other show just about that, but it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
really a good. What a non-shaming way to look at all
Yeah.
aspects of human
Yes.
behavior and
Totally.
yeah, chef's kiss to that book. All right,
Yep.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Listeners,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next show.